Hello, how are we?
Very well. Very well. Thank you.
Good. We have a few more that are being admitted right now. And then we can get the show started. Hello, how is everyone?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm going to get let's start over. I'm going to get the show started. Okay? I've been rushed all day, so I'm going to shake it off. We're going to have a great time, okay?
Sounds good.
All
Sounds
right.
awesome.
Hello, everyone. This is Opus Night, and you have entered Night Vision. And tonight we have, what is it, S.L. Harvey?
Yes. You can call me Sean, would be fine.
Fine. That's what we went with last time. He's joining us again. And Mark Stallings. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good.
And James Jenkins. Hello?
Hello? Can you not hear me?
Yes.
Your mic's pointed up.
I'm using a different mic. Is that better? Maybe I have the wrong mic set up. Sorry.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, gentlemen. I had some thoughts throughout the week about different courses of action we could take on the show tonight. Because there's been a lot going on in the publishing world. And I try to touch on topics that are going to be instrumental in teaching new writers, as well as kind of tips that existing writers haven't heard yet. So let's start with this. When writing dialogue, where do you feel your story, when you're writing, has to take a turn? How do you switch your dialogue into a completely, like out of a scene into another scene? And we're going to start with you, Mark Stallings.
So help me understand when you talk about when the story has to take a turn, how are you changing dialogue?
How do you go from scene to scene to scene when you're using dialogue? Because that seems to be a lot of problems that creates a lot of problems.
Well, staying consistent in the voice and the moment.
And dealing with the elements of atmosphere. How do you create that atmosphere throughout?
So what I do, and one of the authors I work with, Shadow Alley Press, Sam Witt, kind of turned me on to a methodology where you do an emotional map. So from the start of the scene to the end of the scene for each one of the characters, so that way I know in scene one, this is where my main character ends up. So then when I start scene two with that main character, I already know his emotional state and I know where it needs to go. So that way the emotional journey or roller coaster in this instance can be consistent. In one of my earlier works, one of my readers, and I like to deal with Royal Road, called me out, basically saying that one of my characters seemed completely erratic. And they were absolutely right, because I had written the scenes independently and then put it all together, right? And so then I didn't have that kind of consistent map.
Now, do you see it when your scene can you feel when it's lacking something?
Especially when I'm doing the read back, I like to read back everything verbally. So I read it out loud. And so you can kind of feel that this feels stilted or stagnant. And then you know you need to go in and tweak the dialogue, or maybe add in some emotional tags, or change up what they're doing while they're speaking.
And do you feel that writer's block, that's kind of where a lot of writers are going into what they consider a writer's block, when it's not really a block? It's a fact that they're not noticing that something just is not right. That element of surprise or suspense or, lust or whatever you're going for, it's kind of taking a detour. If it's not being read out loud by you and you're not enjoying it, it's hard for a reader to enjoy it. And that's pretty much my take on writing in general.
Yeah, when it gets hard, that's where people start to be resistant to wanting to tackle a scene or a concept or kill a character. So then they're, oh, I can't do this. So then, it's just got to kind of knuckle down and do it. I mean, just cut that guy's throat or get that dialogue going or go ahead and make them kiss. I mean, whatever your deal is, just get work through it. You can always fix it in post. Just get the words down.
James?
Yeah.
How do you deal with this subject?
So as far as like the writer's block aspect of it, I agree with Mark in a lot of that. Times you kind of have to buckle down and do it. But I found when I'm having a hard time writing a scene, like if I can't get through it for some reason, I'll usually go back and I'll actually look at my outline. And a lot of the time, that scene that I'm working on is broken in some way. Either it's not adding anything to the story, or I'm not excited about it, like you mentioned, which then means it's not going to work in the finished book. It's not going to be exciting enough. So at that point, I will either scrap the scene and I'll find some way to take that important information that would have happened in that scene and I'll put it either earlier or later in another scene that I am excited to write and that I do think will be more exciting for the reader. And as far as the dialogue, I just try to fix it in post. Is a great way to do it. In a reread, you make sure your characters stay consistent. I write a lot of POVs, a lot of multiple POVs.
You're fading out, dear.
Am I? Okay. So I write a lot of different POVs in my books, and I try to make sure that anytime I'm starting a new scene from a new perspective, that I'm in the headspace of whichever character I'm writing. So whichever character it is, they all have something that makes them unique. Sometimes I cheat a little bit and like, well, this character maybe really likes guns, so I relate everything that way. Or you find the one thing that makes them unique and you can focus on that, and then it kind of keeps them distinguishable from the other characters, and you can also kind of get in their headspace a little easier.
I like that. Yeah, those distinguishable elements are you can broaden those, and there's another idea of where people seem to think that you should add another character, which I kind of have a problem with. I'm not real big on just throwing a new character or introducing a new character to kind of fill space. If they don't have a purpose and a journey of their own, that doesn't work for me. Now, Sean, how do you kind of wiggle your way through?
I want to start by saying both of those answers were awesome.
And
I don't believe mine are going to be as satisfactory.
Sure.
I deal with dialogue in a very organic sort of way. I know sort of where I want the conversation to go. And I just sort of let the dialogue take itself. I have a heavy background in RP, mostly in DMing or storytelling. With Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role player. So I am very used to playing 5, 6, 10 different characters all within like 15 minutes, to sort of flesh out a story or flesh out a game. So I just sort of let the dialogue go. I don't do much outlining. I've been trying to recently with the book I'm writing now, the sequel to my debut one. I really am trying to outline, but I find that oftentimes my outlines change as I'm writing, specifically dialogue. Because I just, the scene changes and the tone changes based on how the dialogue sort of rolls out. So while not the most scientific way to go about it, it seems to really work well for me. And from the critiquing and the feedback that I've gotten, my dialogue tends to read very genuine, at least from the people that have read it. So I'm, pretty happy with it. I do go back and tweak it, in post. I make ample use of words, text-to-speech feature, so I could listen. I mean, it doesn't have any sort of tonal changes, but I can at least hear how the words flow out.
Yep, I do the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
And it's invaluable. And when it comes to writer's block, like, I think I agree wholeheartedly. Whenever asked for my advice to any writer, it's always right. Like, if you didn't write, yesterday, and you feel like all sort of stuck on something, just write. Like, the most daunting thing you can come across is that blank page. And once you scar that page with, a little bit of text, it's a little less daunting.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a little less daunting. So write something
care.
down. If I get stuck on a scene, I just purchased Scrivener, which I'd never used before.
I love Scrivener. Yeah.
I swear by it. I used to write in just Word and just start at the top and just write all the way down. Scrivener allows me to pop around in my scenes. So if I'm not really feeling a scene and it's just not coming out and I'm hitting the backspace more than I'm hitting anything else, I'll go on to another scene that I think I have a little bit better feel for at that point, and just sort of circle back around. It does lead to, as Mark had said, some sort of stilted things where I need to go in and say, well, when I wrote it, it sounded like a good idea, but taking into consideration the scene beforehand, not so much. But like, I think it's invaluable to be able to sort of get those juices flowing and get something on the page.
So who among us is an outliner? Because I personally, I cannot outline. I write my last line and I run towards that. I know precisely where my characters are going and what's expected of them. And I know that outlining is extremely important and seems to be like salvation to a lot of writers. And that's beautiful. Good, but myself, I'm full, steam ahead.
I'm with you, Opus.
Yeah, I mean,
I know where they want to. I know where I want to get, where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey is sort of where I think the magic is. And
yeah, the elements.
I do try to outline, like, I know, like, I want this scene to be here and I want these things to happen, but very often it changes in the midst. But I am trying to, right? Like, I think it's a valid tool in your toolbox.
Oh,
right?
I think it's lovely. I wish I could do that. My brain does not work that way. Trust me, I will scribble 5 minutes, into it. And I'm like, I cannot do this. This is making me crazy, because I'm thinking too much. Okay, did they move here? Do they do that? Who were they with? Where they go? I can't. I can get into it, start writing, and I'm following along, and I love that. I love that the characters are teaching me and creating elements of surprise that if I wrote it down, I would have never seen coming. That's how I feel.
It seems more natural.
Yeah, it's more fluid.
Hey, hang on, I'm gonna throw up the flag here. So
I got stuff to say too.
So I do stuff from an organization perspective that would probably make your skin crawl. I mean, I start all the way up at the mock cover and blurb before I even start writing. And then I go through 7-point story structure. Then I go into contour where I actually build out all the beats. And then I go into an outline. Like, the outline for the book I'm writing right now is about 10,000 words. I mean, of an outline. So, but here's the thing. Like, I was joking with my wife at dinner earlier because the scene I have to write today in my outline is 2 sentences. Okay. So we still have some magic. I still, like my last book, I surprise killed a character and just had no idea I was going to do that. And I'm like, this seems like a really good place to kill somebody. And I just did it. And so we still have magic.
I've done that. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
No, we're not.
I'm going to go from Colorado Springs to Orlando. I want to know what roads we're going to take.
Gotcha. So do you make it part of your research when you're doing the outline? Like, is that your process, that the research, then I'm going to do my outline? Or how do you structure a story? Mark.
So if I can throw in, can I
Yeah,
add
sure,
some to the outlining process? So I used to not outline. I spent probably 3 or 4 years working on one novel.
Mhm.
When I
That's where I am.
finally finished it, I was super proud of myself. It was the first book I'd ever finished. But there were issues with it, like the pacing was off, the characters that, you know, first novels, they always have those problems.
Mhm.
And I found like I forget who it was, Arthur C. Clarke or something, but he had like The Shape of a Story. He has a lecture he does on that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a practice book just so I can get pacing down.
Mhm.
And I outlined the book. I wrote it in 3 weeks. And it was the first novel I released. So I like when I don't outline a book, it takes me forever because I have tried to go back to pantsing it and discovery writing since then. And the books always work out fine. They just take me so much longer. I found outlining gives you, I treat the outline like my first draft. That's my discovery process. I'm telling myself the story and I'm enjoying the ride. I'm letting the characters tell me what they would do. And then if something changes in the process, like Mark said, if a character decides he has to die in that scene, he's going to die in that scene and I can change the rest of the outline after that.
Exactly.
But for me, it really helps when you get to that part where I can't work on this scene today. I'm going to go to this other scene that I'm actually excited to write, and I'll come back to this one tomorrow.
So do you find when you're outlining that you are able to jump from scene to scene? Or is it something where, like you said, kind of the time constraints that you can get it done and work?
It's because I know what I need to do. So when I outline, I start from beginning to end. I treat it like a first draft. I'm telling myself that for that story for the first time, and I have to go from beginning to end. And then if ideas pop in, I'll sprinkle them in later and change the order as necessary. But yeah, it makes it when I sit down at my desk to start writing for the day, it's like, all right, I know what happens in this scene. I can knock it out tonight. So yeah, it makes it go faster because I know what I'm doing. I know not everyone needs that, but I definitely need that organization in my life. So.
And see, that's one of the big reasons I wanted to kind of start out with that. Because there is no magic way of creating stories. And, you know, like I said, with myself, I have tried 1,000 times to do even a little smidgen of an outline, you know, about a character. And I don't know, you know, I always say my left side of my brain is where I work and create, and my right side of my brain is that it will get me in trouble every time because it's going to want to change everything. So I don't know if it's with me, it's more when I see it constructed as an outline, I see problems and I see where this can change and where the story could go that way. And I think it gives me too many options or, you know, and avenues to change it. Whereas when I'm doing it, you know, pantsing it, I literally can run with it. And I want to make sure that that writers know this, especially new writers. Explore what works for you.
Absolutely.
Because no two people are the same.
Nope.
You know, and that's why, you know, I love doing this show. You know, as Sean will tell you, he's been on here before with me. And we get into conversations that publishing people will not, they don't want you to hear this, or they don't want it to kind of go this way or that way, because, you know, things have to be structured. There's rules. Well, some of us don't fit in that box or that category. And because we don't, you know, I think that personally, I can't structure things. I am a completely unstructured kind of entity, period. And I love being able to dive into other people's mindset when it comes to writing. And now, Sean, I have a question.
Sure.
does it make you, the outlining, does it make your story flow quicker in writing? How does it work for you?
I don't know necessarily that my my experimentation with outlining is making it quicker per se.
Mhm.
It certainly does make it easier when you get stuck on a scene
Mhm.
to be able to sort of set it aside and then move on to another scene, if you know what's going to happen in that scene. You know, I'm writing a book now that has a couple of POVs, and a couple of locations that I'm really not feeling one particular one at this point,
Mhm.
but there are a couple others that I'm very passionate about. So it makes it easier for me to pick up those scenes if I know where I intend to start them. I can always go back, you know, once I've written some scenes previous and tweak it a little bit so it fits the flow of the novel. But like I said, it does make it easier for me to avoid, you know, writer's block, right? Where you get stuck on something. So I am really enjoying it. And like I said, Scrivener has made it, you know, so easy for me to do that.
Now, Mark, how about you? How do you feel as far as in the outline? Do you do, when you outline, take us through your outline? What is your process?
So, well, like I had mentioned earlier, I started at the highest level, and then when I'm at the outline point, specifically within a scene, I try to structure it to be about 1,500 words, and I have a goal established for that scene and that emotional journey. So I know what characters are going to be involved. I know where this is, and I know what I need to accomplish during that scene. And so if I can, when I do the initial outline, the first draft, if you will, 2-3 sentences. That's it. Who's there? What needs to happen? And what do I want the end result to be? Right. And that's it. And so then when I go through and I do a second pass, I'll look at this and say, okay, with all of the crazy machinations my brain has gone through, at this point, do I need to add any more detail? Do I need a MacGuffin? Is there a bit of lore? Do I need to put a hook for the next novel into this scene? And then I just sit down and blaze it. I mean, 1,500 words, hour and a half, and I'm out. So, I mean, that's how I look at outlines. The nice thing with an outline, like what James was talking about, if I'm stuck on this scene, I can just jump into the next one. I don't really care. I try to write linearly, start A to B, to Z, all the way down. But if I'm stuck, then I'm just like, let's just move on to something else. Let's go to slice of life, or do it. I don't care because I know what I'm doing. Right? I just look at the outline. What am I writing today? There we go.
Now, I want to be able to kind of poo-poo some of the myths as far as with writing. What are some of the rules that you implement for yourself that are not kind of standard rules? Like my biggest pet peeve is you can only write a story that you've experienced, which I think is kind of limiting it.
Yeah, I write fantasy, and I haven't seen a dragon in real life.
And we know things, we pick things up throughout, our journey in life. And I want to kind of give new authors, especially, the opportunity to explore. Explore your imagination. If there's not a world that's already created, that's a beautiful thing. Like you don't want to keep regurgitating the same things that have been done. That's why I'm not real big on trending kind of things. So as far as that goes, James, what's your advice?
Yeah. So for that, like, write what you know is what they always say. And I agree with you 100%. Like I said, I've never seen a dragon. There are dragons in my books, but I think like that advice is good in the sense that we all know the human experience to an extent. Like maybe we haven't fought in a war, maybe we've never, had superpowers, whatever, but we still know how people talk to each other. We know what words sound like. So I think, yeah, you should not be afraid to try anything, and don't worry about genre. Like, write a superhero horror novel. It doesn't matter. Like, just mix whatever you want. I think that's the biggest one. I see a lot of stuff online, at least. I've kind of taken a hiatus from social media, so I don't see it a lot anymore. But I used to see people like, hey, I have this idea for a story. Does that sound okay? And always the first few comments are like, ooh, those tropes really don't work together. You should look for something else. I was like, no, write that. If that's what you're excited about,
write a good story.
That. Yeah, exactly. If it's a good story, it doesn't matter.
And what if there is a superhero that turns into a dragon? That's an incredible idea. And, I think there's a lot of misconception as far as, we need, like, right now, the big thing is no more vampire books, which who writes this stuff? Who is the one to deem what the general public want?
Well, that's TradPub. They're the ones who are telling you no vampire.
Crazy.
But and that was because Twilight saturated the market, and then everybody was writing vampire stuff. And I think that Michael Anderle came along and said, "Hey, I want to do a space opera vampire mashup. So screw all y'all, I'm doing it."
Yeah, and that's precisely
cool.
my point.
Yeah, write a good book. Like it could be vampires, it could be zombies.
Exactly.
Don't write a bad vampire book.
That's hard there. Yeah.
So So if the people telling you vampires aren't going to sell, well, that's not really what we need to hear. We need to hear is that they will not buy your book, meaning that whatever that publishing house is, it doesn't mean that there's not a publishing house out there that won't do it, or that you can't go indie and do it yourself.
Exactly.
There's that one person that will buy every vampire book ever released. So
there's whole hordes of people that would buy every vampire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Coming from the role play community, there's a lot of people that will buy any vampire book you put out.
They got to prepare for Masquerade, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, how many vampire TV shows are there? It can't be dead.
Yeah.
They're booting out another one. It's just like every other day there's another vampire show.
I think I think it's more, don't write a vampire book that sort of fades in with all the other vampire books.
Write your vampire book.
Exactly. Write your
book.
book. And if it has vampires,
cool.
Hey, good job. Yeah.
And if it has vampires and dragons, so be it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, to me, and I say this a lot, like it has less to do with whatever your, like, if you're writing fantasy or writing horror, whatever, what your what your specialness is, right? Like, I think it really has more to do with the characters, right? If you write a believable character who just happens to be a vampire, or or a sympathetic antagonist who happens to be a dragon, like, it's more important that the characterization is believable and relatable than it is what they do in their off hours, right? Like, characters shouldn't be defined by their species, or, even out of the fantasy sci-fi horror genre, characters shouldn't be defined by, their gender, their race, their, choice of, coffees, right? Like, it's part of their personality. Sure, it builds who they are, but they're not defined by it, right? Like, a good character, you change a couple of things, you could change their race, you could change their sex, you could change their specialness, and they'd still be a compelling character.
And that's definitely where I think a lot of young writers, they get stuck on that. Well, right now the character trending, they wouldn't do this or they wouldn't do that. that's what you want. You don't want your characters to do what, you know, X, Y, and Z is doing. You don't want them in the, you know, you want to create atmosphere. You want to create relatability. You
Right.
want you want your book to speak to them as though, you know, I don't want you to show me the box. I want you to get in the box with me so I can tell you the story, kind of thing. And I'm not telling it to you, but I want you to read it as though you're living it vicariously. You know,
Right.
through the characters.
And you can't do that if your characters aren't relatable.
Yeah, I want to be able to smell the cigar, you know, when I'm reading it. I want to envision every element in that book, you know, so that I can have a preconceived notion of where this book is going and where, you know, the character plot is gonna, you know, somewhere take a twist, because I want that element of surprise. When it doesn't, I want to be like, oh my God, you got me. You know, that is the beauty of writing. Whatever you write, you know, you want it to touch just that one person. If it touches millions, beautiful. If it touches one person and they come back and they're like, you know what, this changed my whole perception of who I am or how I feel about this subject. Or when I'm writing, you know, I used to write sci-fi, or I used to write this, but now I'm going to actually leap over and try something out of my element. You know, isn't that what we do? We
Sure.
don't want to be cataloged ever. I mean, I know it's not always a good thing to kind of, I know the standard is, what genre do you write? What if you write all over the map? There's not enough room for you to tell, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
want to be
whatever
known as a
book
storyteller, not as a fantasy storyteller
Yeah.
or a horror storyteller.
Exactly. So don't limit yourself to I'm only this or I only do that. Explore you, because whatever's not created, that's your job to create it. And the stories that are long lasting and that have the biggest impact are the ones that are the truest and realest to the reader. They want to feel it. They want to feel, oh my God, this is me. You know, I love this person. Now, James.
Yeah.
What elements do you find with a character that you want them to develop this way and they end up going the complete opposite? Do you have anyone in your story like that you can give us a characterization of, okay, this character, he was a nice guy, but guess what? The element of surprise, he just doesn't want to be nice anymore. Life
So
has
I kind of have that. My first novel, Jack Bloodfist Fixer, it's about an orc in a suit. And the bad guy is a paladin of justice that's come into town to get revenge for what the orcs did 20 years ago. So I kind of did I flipped it where in the genre terms, the bad guys normally the bad guys are the good guys. But this villain, this paladin, I got to the end of the book and I couldn't bring myself to kill him. So now he has an entire spin-off series where I'm giving him a redemption arc. Just because I liked him so much while I was writing him, and that character wouldn't let me just off him. So yeah, you need to be open to what your characters tell you. Because I mean, yeah, we're making them up and we're making them do the things we need them to do for the story. So it's more just trust your instincts when you're kind of telling yourself, hey, there's more to this character than you think there is. And I've had countless times, I couldn't really be specific about a lot of them, but I'll have characters in the first draft say something, like I'll just be typing it out and something will come out. It'll be a line that doesn't make it to the final book, but it informs who the character is for me. And I will always just keep that in mind. Like, all right, well, I now know that when this character's drunk, he flirts too much, something like that. So it won't be in the final book, but it'll be in his personality. It'll be one of those layers that I keep in mind whenever I write his dialogue, whenever I write one of his perspective scenes. So always listen for
right
those.
There is the most poignant thing I have heard in years. Right there. Now I know that because when he gets drunk, he's a flirt. That element of where we are learning as we go is what the exploration that a reader is going with us. They're living vicariously through these characters, you know, through our writing. And that's amazing. Now, Mark, how is your characters, how is their decision making? Do you have characters that have hard times making decisions? Or do you have characters that always know, okay, this is how it's going to go?
So, well, I mean, from my perspective, I don't know always how it's going to go. I know where I want them to go, but that doesn't necessarily mean they go there. Similar to like what James was talking about, you know, my antagonist in my fantasy book, and I'm currently working on book 2. And book 2 will set up this guy's redemption arc because of the things that the thought process I had him going through in book 1, the bad guy. I was like, you know, he's not really a bad guy. He's just an asshole. And so, right? I mean, so he's not a bad guy. He's just has a pampered view of the world, selfish, conceited narcissist. So I'm purposely working through to set him up for a redemption arc because I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming, that he actually internally doesn't think he's a bad guy, isn't out to be malicious, other than being, you know, like, because I do whoosh off Magical Academy in essence, and so he's the foil for my main character, right? He's the one who's spoiled rich kid, and my main character is the youngest kid in the class. He was from a farm. I mean, you know, it's the complete polar opposite. Well, they're going, I want them to be best buddies. I mean, you know, just there was something in this bad guy that I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a redemption arc. Similarly, one of the supporting characters in book 1 hooked up with another student. I was like, what? Well, what do you mean? I didn't see that. So, you know, I'm not a pantser. I like to say I'm a micro pantser. So, like I said, you know, I have 3 sentences.
I'm a micro outliner.
So I have 3 sentences to cook up 1,500 words. So it's like, there's a lot that can happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Sean, how do you interpret your character's kind of development when it comes to, do you have times where, as James said, he's learning about his character and all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, story's going to take a detour?
Oh, absolutely.
There's elements.
Absolutely. You know, because I'm, you know, more than a micropantser, right? I often will enter into a scene or a storyline that's moving through the book, and by way of dialogue and by way of sort of how events lay out, I find that a certain course of action for the character makes more sense. Where the path that I had sort of carved out for them really doesn't fit them anymore. Like, it seems like I'm trying to force something on the character itself. So they definitely develop and change as I go. I had originally in my debut book, Shadows of a Dream, I had a character, wasn't a minor character, it was definitely a supporting character though. Aristoy was meant to sort of be the lead, the less popular member of like a buddy cop, you know, sort of dynamic with the main character. But I found while writing her that I really dug her. Like the path that I had set out for her all of a sudden seemed insufficient for the character that she was. And all of my early beta readers, including my wonderful wife, who is my #1 beta reader, latched onto this character like a dog on a newspaper. Right? They love this character. They want to hear more about this character. They wanted me to write, don't worry about Hollis. Just tell us more about Aristoy. And as I was finishing my edits, as a means to try to draw some traffic to the book when it released, I started writing short stories. And of course, I started writing short stories about Aristoy and developed her background a lot more. Very much like James said, it was things that you didn't need to read the short stories to understand the book, but the short stories informed the character that was in the book, making her a more complete character. And, so much so that once my trilogy is done, there's a very good chance that there'll be a Aristoy standalone novel, if not, a couple of books or a trilogy, because it's a character that I'm just absolutely fascinated by.
Now, how do we feel about branding? The new thing seems to be that we are our own brand. And I'll give my opinion last. So let's start with James. Tell us what you think about branding.
I think from a marketing perspective, branding is good. You want people to know who you are if you want to sell books. Like you'd mentioned earlier, though, you don't want to be pigeonholed. You don't want to be like, for me, when I first started, I was the guy that wrote that book about the orc. And I'm still all about orcs. I've got a lot of orc books planned, but I don't want to just be the orc guy. I want to be the guy who tells epic fantasy stories with a thriller pacing, or can just write a fast-paced action book with fantastical elements. Like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that writes fun, exciting stories with great characters, which I think that's what everyone wants to be. But I don't want my brand to be just the one thing. I want people to see my name and know what they can expect from that story, but still be surprised by what's in there. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's what I want.
No,
it's an awesome answer.
It's an awesome answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we all, is that basically, does anyone else have anything to add to the whole
I think that's dead on. I want to be.
Yeah, I think it's dead on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I want my brand, and I want my brand to be a good storyteller. Like if you pick up an S.L. Harvey book, you're gonna have a story that's gonna draw you in, that you're gonna care about folks, whether it's, care about good things happening to them or wishing horrible things happen to them. And at the end, it leaves you wanting a little bit more.
They buy the next book. That's what
buy the next book, go to my website, read some fiction, throw a DM out at me, ask me, what happened to this character, what happened to that character.
I love that.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we all want. We want to be good
Exactly.
storytellers.
We definitely all agree on that element, but I kind of have a little caveat to that. When it comes to branding, I think the approach should be more about the author than selling the items of the author. Or there's nothing wrong with merchandising. I think merchandising is amazing. However, I've seen certain things recently that kind of disturbed me. And it's this on the books themselves. Well, my book is exactly like this writer's, or if you like that writer, then you'll definitely like my book. And I kind of feel as though the last thing that I would want is my book being related to someone else's.
Well, but
How do you guys feel about that?
People inherently are looking for comparisons. I'm drinking a coffee. Well, what's this coffee like? Oh, well, do you go to Dutch Brothers? Well, this coffee, cold brew, is very much like that. I mean, so we're inherently we're going to do comparisons. What's this TV show I'm watching? It's phenomenal. Oh, well, what's it like? Oh, well, I know you like Firefly, so it's similar to that, but the characters aren't as well developed, that kind of a thing. So we're inherently looking to do that. I agree with you that it seems like everybody and their dog tries to say, if you liked Harry Potter, you're going to love my series.
Oh yeah,
And I'm like, come on, really?
That's
tell me more about what your series is about. Not this is like Harry Potter. I was like, I read Harry Potter. I'm done with that. I'm on to something different. But
yeah, I can agree with that. But for me, I don't like to say it myself. I don't want to say, hey, if you liked X, you're going to love my stuff. But I do love it when readers say that.
Readers say
No,
when readers say, hey, if you liked Dresden Files, you're going to love this guy's book.
Exactly.
That was like the happiest day of my life when my urban fantasy series was compared to one of the best-selling urban fantasy series out there.
Well,
so you want that. But yeah, I agree. You don't want to be
Harry Potter, so I'm happy with that too.
I don't want to be the next J.K. Rowling, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not right now.
Like, I think in in our sort of internet instant gratification world, it's definitely a tool in your toolbox, because generally you have a short period of time to get someone interested, maybe not to read your book, but to look into your book.
Yeah,
so like my big tagline for my book is never ending story all grown up, right? Like, it's not the never ending story, right? And it's not and I don't write like the never ending story, but it's a way to sort of grab someone and say, hey, if you liked that, maybe you might like,
if you like this, you might like me.
You might like this, right? Like, it catches people's attention. But then, like you said, you need to have some meat, right? Like, you've got the sign that says, 2 steaks for $1, but you got to have that meat.
Back it up. Yeah, if you're going to make a claim,
and
there should be
the biggest issue. I think the delivery on it has to be exactly at least a portion of what the other book or other author has delivered.
Right.
Like Emily Dickinson, I would never want to turn around and assume, oh, my writing's exactly like that. And if it comes from a reader, their perspective, that's beautiful.
That's why I like that, because I'm going to make the claim
from a place of me saying, oh, well, I write like Poe. Really? I would love to hear a reader say that. I would love to have, that's a huge compliment. But it's not something I want to sell my name with branding. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like that is kind of where we're taking that turn, because everything is compared nowadays. And I'm not real big on comparisons. I mean, in certain senses, yes, it's beautiful. It works. It's great for marketing, but I don't like assumptions on, let's put it this way. If I watch a video, I don't want 50,000 videos to come up that are exactly like that video. I want to be able to go and find what videos I want to explore. I don't want an assumption of what I like, who I am, what I think, because I happen to have looked up, a certain brand or a certain this or a certain that. And I feel as though, again, that's that little box that it makes things comfortable, I think, for people, when they can kind of, oh, well, they're exactly like this, or they're exactly like that. And I just don't, I think that's a generalization. Am I alone on that? Because
I agree with you. Yeah.
I don't want authors thinking that's okay. You be you. Don't be afraid to be you. Don't be afraid to write what hasn't been written.
It goes back to the vampire analogy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This
Twilight's been written.
conversation
Don't
culminates
write
to
Twilight.
point.
If I can
Write
draw a
vampires, but
comparison.
don't write something that's already been written.
Yeah. It's like I'm going to go away from writing for a second, but if we go back in time, Mark Hamill was cast as Luke Skywalker, right?
Right.
He was always Luke Skywalker until he started doing voice acting, and then he became the Joker.
And boy, did he become the
Yes.
Oh,
So don't pigeon, like you're saying, we don't pigeonhole ourselves. Someone's going to say, oh yeah, they write just like Emily Dickinson. And then there is that fear that, well, I have to just keep writing like that now. I can't branch out.
Exactly.
You're not going to be excited by the same thing forever. If you are, I'm really sorry, but that's boring. You let
the
yourself
readers
be
aren't going to be excited by it either.
Yeah, no,
Right,
they're going to like, there'll be those few readers that are always going to want that Emily Dickinson vampire story.
Mhm.
We should get at least one of those. That'd actually be great.
That would be awesome.
But you have more than that one passion, and you should write all those things.
Well, gentlemen,
That's my.
I want you each to read, if you have the back of your book, your blurb, so that we can kind of give them something to be able to relate to. Each one of us have stories that we have created that I want the focus to be on you specifically. I don't want to relate it to anyone else's writing. This is all about you. We ready?
Give me a second.
Okay. Mark, you ready? You got your thing off. Okay.
I'm sorry, my son just got home. So my book is The Elements. It's the Silver Coin Saga. Death comes with the harvest. Salvation lies in the Valley of the Moon, along the path of martial magic. Sean always assumed he would be apprenticed to be an herbalist in the sleepy village of Mogu and follow in the path of peace, just like his father before him. It is the way, has always been the way. But when his village is sacked by a raiding force of vicious monsters, corrupted by dark ki, life as Sean knows it is over. Family dead, villagers slain, his home burnt to ash. Now all Sean wants to do is figure out why his people were targeted and get revenge on the merciless creatures sweeping across the continent like a plague of locusts, spreading their vile corruption. His only hope at salvation and retribution lies in the Valley of the Moon, at the fabled Xingyi School of Martial Magic. If he has to succeed, he will need to learn to cultivate the energy of the elements, hone his martial and crafting skills, and complete the school's harsh tests and trials. It will take more than a passing grade at this school, though, and not all that fail survive the experience.
I love it.
It's awesome.
Did you feel it? Is that not beautiful? Good job.
Thank you.
Sean?
All right, let me pull this up here. Stephen's existence has become a wash of malaise, from the job he despises to the life that somehow has spun out of his control. He's grown apart from his wife, her respect for him having faded many years ago. As an escape, once a week, he and his friends get together to play the game, exploring the magical world of Tyr through role play. Stephen soon learns there is more to Tyr than he ever imagined. The game, which he thought to be a construct of his imagination, was actually based on visions of a world beyond his perceptions. In his dreams, Stephen sees the world of Tyr through the eyes of his reflection, Hollis, who lives a life which Stephen could only imagine. When tragedy strikes, Stephen must work with his reflection to unravel the mystery that spans both Tyr and Earth. New comrades in both worlds offer to aid them. Although some are true allies, others are motivated by their selfish desires. As Stephen draws closer to Hollis, he must track down the murderers of his closest friends before he joins them in death.
I love it. So nice.
And what's the title of that book?
Yeah.
Shadows of a Dream?
Shadows of a Dream, because I need to buy it.
See?
That would be awesome. That would be a huge, a huge boost to my ego.
We all loved it. And
Yeah,
that's the purpose of this show. I so incredibly want new readers to explore the love of writing, and growing up, that was the most beautiful thing my grandmother and my mother ever afforded me was the opportunity to finish. They would tell me a beginning of a story and then I would finish. Put a cap on it, baby. And that's what I heard the entire time growing up. And, you know, I thirst for that engagement, especially with readers. And I want every author to always remember it's about the story. It's not about what we sell. It's not about what the numbers are. It's not about what's trending. Leave that for, you know, at the door. I want people to love the stories and feel them and feel
Absolutely.
something that is, you're going to have a legacy and remember and read to your children, and they're going to read to their children. I mean, that's the whole purpose of and beauty of you know, Wordsworth and Wordsworth and having Oscar Wilde and all of the, you know, the elders, so to speak, that kind of paved this path, you know, for all writers. I mean, we are on a glorious, glorious exploration. You know, we live in a time where everything is new, even though it's been done. There is always that newness and on new eyes, on new perspective, on, you know, what people preach, how they feel, what they think. I mean, we have so much to offer readers. And I absolutely love what we do. And I know all of you do, because just when you read your blurbs, you know, it fills my heart and I love it. I love it. James, let's hear it.
All right. So this is from my first novel, Jack Bloodfist Fixer.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this.
Jack Bloodfist fixes things. That's what his card says anyway. When the orcs and goblins of Somervale, Virginia need something done, they call Jack. He's the one who convinces the local PD to ignore any orcish violence. The guy who makes sure the goblins aren't evicted whenever they do something decidedly goblin. He does the little things that no one else is willing to do, like handing over the keys whenever prodigal son returns, or identifying the body of said prodigal. He's always believed himself capable of fixing any issue his extended family needs fixed, even those they create for themselves. But when a powerful paladin comes to town and starts killing orcs, Jack may be out of his depth. With the help of a drow detective, a reporter that is more than she seems, and a wizard with plans of his own, Jack hopes to, if not fix the problem, at least make sure it doesn't get worse. That's when the paladin's angry god shows up with a whole army of holy knights, all in a day's work.
We love it. Love it. Gentlemen, I have had such a great time, as always.
Ditto.
Now I want to go through and each one of you tell us how we can reach you. How can readers reach you? James, let's start.
Yeah, so I'm not really on social media much. I do have a Twitter. It's at Beth Teva, BETHTEVA. I respond to messages. I don't tweet much, but I will respond. There's also my website, jamesjakins.com. It has a sign up for my newsletter. Sign up for my newsletter, you get a free novella. If you message me, I will respond.
Beautiful. Mark?
My website's markstallings.com. I'm on Facebook, Mark Stallings, author. And I have a Patreon, so under, funny enough, Mark Stallings.
Wonderful. Sean?
I have a website, readslharvey.com. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, both read SL Harvey. And if you want to email me, it's readslharvey@gmail.com. Super easy to remember. I love interacting with readers or just people who want to chit chat about writing. Like, I just like to talk to folk.
And if anyone has any questions, please feel free at any time to give opusnight.com a holler, and I can put you with any one of these gentlemen And even along your journey, if you're confused about syntax or you need certain types of sentence structure or whatnot, feel free to let us know, because this journey is all about the story, and we all want you to love it as much as we do, because it's why we do what we do.
That's why it's called a labor of love.
Exactly. Gentlemen, I've had a beautiful night.
Thank you,
And I
Opus.
thank
you,
you
Opus.
so much. Okay. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.